So I'm just cutting the poly with a standard hacksaw. You can get proper polythene cutters, which are like a ratchet cutter, which is a blade. You get a nice clean cut. But seeing I don't have one of those, I'm just using a hacksaw, and I clean the cut up with a brand new utility knife. Just smooth it all out, get all those rough edges off. So then it'll slide into the fitting, because it's got to slide in through an O-ring. So you don't want any sharp edges, sort of dangly bits that'll upset the O-ring and create a leak. So just sort of scrape them clean. Obviously if you've got a proper cutter you don't have to do this, and you get a nice clean cut. If you've got a lot of joins to do, I'd probably recommend getting one of them. I've got this pipe here I'm going to sleeve the poly with. It's actually the old down pipe that used to be here feeding this IBC tank. So I'll pull that connection off and just use this bit of old pipe to sleeve this poly on this end where this sort of gravel is before I cover it. I'm just going to cover it in certain spots to hold it down before I fill it up with water, and once all the fittings are connected and filled up with water, check for leaks, and then I'll be able to backfill. So these fittings here, generally I just loosen off the nut, and you can slide that over and push it in over the O-ring, but I'll show you the components. You pull the nut out, this internal part, I'll hold it here. There's actually an O-ring there that the poly pipe slips through, and it seals on the inside. So once that poly's in there and that nut's done up, obviously pushes on these plastic holders and holds the poly in place through the O-ring. So you can just slip the nut on, slip that on, make sure it pushes all the way through the O-ring, and then you just tighten the nut up. That's why you want a nice neat cut on the poly so you don't score the O-ring or get anything in there. So you don't have to take the nut right off, you can just loosen it, push it onto the poly and then tighten it up. And I normally tighten it up hand tight and just slightly over hand tight, just with a spanner or something, but normally hand fairly tight. I've got these fittings done up hand tight, and I just sort of give them a little just a nudge to sort of lock them tight. And that's basically all there is to it. I'll line that top elbow up with the outlet there. I'll put the end connector in that section there, pull out that little valve we had in there. We were just using that to fill this IBC tank behind me for the water for the caravan. And we'll be able to hook up this end and continue on. So I've just installed this end connector onto the valve. There's a bush here that I already had installed, which reduces the 1.5 inch down to 1 inch outlet, or 25mm. And then I've installed the end connector into that, and I've used thread tape. Use thread tape to take up any differences in the thread to make a nice tight seal. The advantage of these fittings, once I do have this poly in, if I do get a leak on the thread, you can just undo your poly, tighten up your thread, or pull it out and redo the thread tape and then reinstall the poly. Sort of like a union, you'll be able to fix your leaks, but hopefully we have no leaks. So make sure you thread tape all your threaded joins. I'll put this bit of pipe in here and just put a bit of dirt on that section there to hold it down, and we'll be on our way. We've got this end connected up now and that end sleeved, and just a bit of dirt on there. I also opened the valve to flush the pipe and also to fill it with water so we don't crush the pipe when we backfill it, so it's full of water. We'll be able to fill in a couple of sections here where there's no fittings. The next fitting will be the T-piece here where the pump shed will be. We'll keep going along. We've got this end tank here. There'll be a T-piece going in here, elbow up into the tank, and up the other end to the big tank there'll be just an elbow down the bottom and an elbow up the top going into the tank to an end connector. So as I said, I flushed that pipe and had water running out the end. So now we've got the pipe full of water, which will help stop it crushing once we backfill. As I said before, I originally was going to go with 3/4 or 19mm pipe. I ended up going with 25mm because as I can fill the tanks from each other, if that end tank down that end is full, I can open that valve, and if this one's half empty or empty, I can open that valve and fill it up from the other tank, and it'll fill a lot quicker with the 25mm pipe rather than the 19mm. This is the section where the T-piece is going in for the pump shed. See, I've just done a bit of a trench in, just lifted the base of the pump shed up that I built. You can see how it's constructed. It's just basically 4 treated pine sleepers. They were 2.4 meters long. They've been trimmed to 1.6, and the parts that were trimmed off have been screwed underneath. So we'll drill a hole in the back here, around here for the poly pipe to come up. So we'll tee in there, come up through the back, put an elbow and come straight up into the pump shed, or through the base there. It's got a fair bit of weight, and once the shed's built it'll just bolt to that base and it won't be going anywhere. So you can see there I've just drilled a hole through the base of what will be the pump shed for the poly to come up through. Just use a hole saw. This is the plug that drilled out. So I've got that T-piece coming in with an elbow, bit of poly come up, and that'll go up through that hole that we just drilled. There's our floor of our pump shed back down. You can see where the T comes in underneath. We've got the poly coming in, up to an end connector and just to a brass ball valve at the moment. And later on we can adjust the height of that. With that valve on there I'll be able to pressurise it once it's all hooked up and check for leaks. I've got most of the trench covered over now. Just had a bit of downpour of rain, still drizzling at the moment, looks like it's coming in. I've just left the fittings exposed, and I'll probably leave them exposed overnight. I've got this tank turned on, so now they're all connected together in a manifold. We can choose which tank we want to draw from, and because this tank on this end receives the most water, because it's fed from the front and back on this side of the shipping container house, it fills up first. So currently I've got that open just to keep the line pressurized, and we can draw water off from this point here until the pump shed's built. So from this point I'll still be able to fill the caravan just using the height of the water in the tank. So I've got that exposed, filled all this in. And the same this side, I've just got to finish that end up there. It started to pour down rain, so I'll finish that shortly. There's a bit of a break in the rain now. It looks like we might be getting a little bit more shortly. So now we've got this hose hooked up here, and that one tank on. I'll open this valve. You can see that's the water coming out just from the pressure in the tank. Thanks again for joining us on the Bushblock Homestead. We'll catch you again next time. See ya.